So the title is The Breach of the Sabbath, and we're taking a historical and current perspectives. And as I said, it's going to be weighed heavily on the historical, because with that understanding, we'll be able to see how to behave, how to think in terms of the current perspectives. So buckle up, let's go on a ride. So why do we need to explore this breach? That is the breach of the Sabbath. In my mind, the first reason why we need to explore this breach is that it gives us context for exploring and understanding what is the connection between Sabbath keeping and the prophetic mark of the beast. So the history is going to give us a broader context when we're looking at this. And I'm happy that we're coming from a study of Daniel. I'm not situating this study in the prophetic for the reason that I want the history to speak. And then when we thinking about prophetic, then we have the historical background, and we would see how it fitted into the prophetic context. But just picking the mark of the beast as just one thing, that this would help us in that exploration and understanding of the connection between Sabbath keeping and the prophetic mark of the beast. Another reason why we need to explore this breach is that it's also going to provide us it's kind of leapfrogging us when we are watching what is going on around us as it were, reimpose a pseudo Sabbath on us as a people. We know what a true Sabbath is. So if anybody comes with a different kind of Sabbath, then of course, this is going to help us to see what to watch. Where are we watching? When are we watching? So it's going to be helping us. And my third rationale is that it's going to give us that zeal and the renewed emphasis we ourselves for honoring and keeping sacred and holy the seventh-day Sabbath as our Maker has given us. And this is very relevant. And brethren, even as we're going through people who have breached the Sabbath, I would ask you to look at the zeal that they have in breaching the Sabbath. And then let's see, those of us that we think we're keeping the Sabbath, do we have that zeal? And if we don't have that zeal, as I don't, then this should provide us that renewal that would be helpful. I just want to tell you my conclusion before I start, so that as I'm speaking, you know why I'm speaking the way I'm speaking and where I'm going to arrive. And when I'm not able to make that case, then at least you can say, you said this, but you're far off. So the first conclusion that I want to make is that you, everybody, we can learn a lot from sleep if we want to understand death. And this comes from a canned proverb that said, if you don't understand death, look at sleep. So it tells you a lot about how death likely going to look like. And of course, we know that in the Bible, death is likened to sleep. And so the history is going to be a great sleep for us to understand death, in this case, the breach of the Sabbath. The other conclusion that I'm going to make is that Sabbath desecration following the pristine period, that's the 1st century, the 2nd century, is an European creation. And propagation around the world as per the historical evidence that we're going to look at. So desecrating the Sabbath, and I will tell you shortly about what I mean by desecration of the Sabbath. Desecration of the Sabbath, after it was properly kept within that short space of time, is a European thing. And the Europeans have propagated this around the world. And the next conclusion that we would also find is that when you hear of renewed calls for the reintroduction of legislated Sabbath desecration, that is to go more into the breach of the Sabbath, it would then, if we learn from sleep what death looks like, then if the Europeans created it and propagated it, then if there is a reintroduction, then the fruit shouldn't fall far from the tree. And so we have to see the Europeans again being at the forefront. And when I mean Europeans, I'm talking about people, both on the continent and outside the continent. And the last conclusion that I would make is that this is going to present a fine opportunity for us as people of God to re-engage the lost world about what really it is to be involved in seventh-day Sabbath keeping. And we don't need to miss this opportunity. So when we hear the noise, it's an opportunity for us to tell the world what real Sabbath is. It might come at a cost, but we have to. So now that you know how I'm going to conclude, let's dig in. What will be the approach? We'll look at the breach of the Sabbath, two types of the breaches. So as I said, I would clarify what I mean by the breach, especially the one that the Europeans are involved. We'll go into breach of the Sabbath, Roman history from Constantine. We'll look at breach of the Sabbath, post-Constantine history. Breach of the Sabbath, English and colonial American history. And lastly, breach of the Sabbath in terms of what the current issues are, post-colonial history, I mean, referring to America, and also what the current issues are. So these are the 5 domains that we'll be looking at, and we'll hit wherever we'll hit, and then we'll continue next week. These are the resources that I use outside of the Bible. The first one, The Sabbath and the Lord's Day by Charles Weisman, is the driving force behind this presentation. And he's the one that challenged me to do this presentation. I can say that most of everything you see is from this book. So I'm not really an original man here. He provided all the information, and he's providing the information to support why the Sabbath and the Lord's Day are the same. In that case, the Sabbath is Sunday. And he used the same information to tell you about the breach. So that is my biggest book, and it's available online. You can read it. I look at the second article, not much. The third, American State Papers Bearing on Sunday Legislation. This is something that you have to find it and look at it. Don't read it, just look at it. It's rich, and it tells you everything, every legislation that I can put everything, legislation, cases, look at it. It's almost 800 pages. Go look for it. It's just fascinating. And it's also available online. And the third one that I chanced on just about a week ago is a report on Sunday observance legislation, Ontario Law Reform Commission, Department of Justice in 1970. And they take you the history of the Sabbath to every law that's been passed on Sunday in Canada. It's fascinating. And the last one, they also tried to do something. This is an article, so it's not as long, looking at similar situation from Alberta standpoint. So this would be more the European going American way, but we could do the same thing using the Canadian way. So that's the resources that are outside of the Bible. And so when we look at that, the breach of the Sabbath, the two types of the breaches that I'm talking about, breach number one is that those who recognize the law of the Sabbath as Yahweh intended it for us, that is for the 7th day, but we're not keeping it as required. So that is where you and I would fall. Like we falter, we do different things, we don't do things properly. So that is a breach. But that is within people who accept the Sabbath law as, in our view, intended. And there's a second breach. And I should also say, that is the breach that Israel fell into. So old Israel, they were not saying, oh, the Sabbath, we don't understand, we don't even know what day it is. No, they knew what it is, they just didn't keep it. And that's what sent them into captivity. And then there's a second breach. This is those who replace the 7-day Sabbath with the first day of the week, but are attempting to strictly keep it as if it were the Sunday. It were the Sabbath. So these people could be honestly deceived, could be very zealous, wanting to keep the Sabbath, but they keep it wrongly. So this is the breach that I fault the Europeans for doing. So the first one, all of us get involved, but that's not the focus. But our focus is the one that an attempt has been made over a period of time to superimpose a day that is not sanctioned, as far as we know, in the Bible, and being used as the Sabbath. And they are keeping it as if it is the Sabbath. And this is where I refer to the mark of the beast and drawing the connection. I know in history, the churches of God have believed what the mark of the beast is. And so we can at least see this connection. Don't even conclude that I'm saying, or you are saying, or anybody has said that the mark of the beast is false worship. That is, let's say, Sunday worship. Don't even make that conclusion. What I'm saying is that see if there's a connection between the mark of the beast and desecration of the Sabbath. And this is where you can see, because the mark of the beast is going to affect the whole world. Without the mark of the beast, people are not going to be involved in economic activity. The mark of the beast is related to worship. The mark of the beast is on the right hand on their forehead, I think symbolically. And those who receive it will experience God's wrath. So that is on one side. But the people who actually make it, the people who are the saints, the people who overcome, when they are being described, you see their description, the saints obey, obedience. I think I had a typo there. The saints are in obedience by keeping God's law in thought and in action, right? And the saints are also people who don't accept the mark of the beast. So at least you see the connection. So whilst we are keeping the true Sabbath, if the mark of the beast is the false Sabbath, it means we won't accept it. So at least there is a diametric opposite that we have to be at the opposite end. So granted that that is correct, then we have an understanding that our stance is going to put us diametrically opposed to the stance which is in the breach. And this is the connection that we need to see. So now let's look at the Roman history and from Constantine. And it's going to be brief and it's going to be a bit quick. The reason being that a lot of them are repetitive. But what the reason I repeat is for you to see that not only one person came to the scene and did something. It is a long line of people doing the same thing. That means it is important to whoever is involved. And so that is the thing that we need to focus on. That you don't focus on the simplicity of the information that is being repeated, but see it as in terms of the players, one after the other, doing the same thing. Why are they doing the same thing? And why is it so important to them to do the same one thing that supposedly, or not supposedly, or to us is wrong? So we talk about the Edict of Milan. By the way, you see this image here. It's a relief made in bronze showing Constantine I and his Edict of Milan. I don't know if the edict is in Latin there. I have no idea. I didn't check up that. But that is why the flag seems to be saying. So what area is this covering? So we're talking about the Roman Empire. Look at this vast expanse. The orange here is the external boundary, right? So it's all over this place. That is top of Africa here, and all the here, and of course they don't show it for the sea. That's understandable. And so you see, look at this vast expanse of an area that this edict covers. So that's a lot, right? So what was the Edict of Milan? So the Edict of Milan is an understanding to let the Christians go off the hook from persecution. That's what it is. So that is not directly a Saturday issue. That is at a time when, after one of the emperors called Diocletian has been about the last to wreak a lot of havoc on Christians. And then at a time when we have the two emperors of Constantine in the west and Licinius in the east, back in AD 311, one emperor, Galerius, brought this edict of toleration that started easing the persecution on Christians. So Christianity became legal. You can practice it without problem. Not so much in the East. So through this marriage proposal between bringing these two men, Constantine and Licinius, together, they made an agreement and came up with this Edict of Milan to make sure that the East also enjoy, together with the West, of this easing of the Christians, having rights to worship in the manner that they want to worship. And also it involved restoration of property to people who have lost property because of persecution. So that is to tell you how Christianity is now coming into acceptance in the Roman Empire. So we then go to the Edict of 321, which is a popular edict that we do reference quite often. And this is where Constantine said, let all judges in all city people and all tradesmen rest upon the venerable day of the sun. And then people in the countryside, they have the liberty to go to the field and plant and reap and all those kinds of things. And they didn't have that strict restriction as the people in the city, because they understood that we probably will lose crops if we restrict them. So here, I just want to make the point that we sometimes overuse this, because at this point, Constantine was not necessarily saying that change from Sabbath and come and worship on Sunday. He is telling people to rest on the day of the sun. We know the connection, but if we use this to say he changed the Sabbath to Sunday, when you read the edict, you don't directly find that. So we just want to be mindful. There is tons of other places where it's been done, so we don't have to push it on this one. But we need to recognize that he is promoting a day that eventually became the day that was used. So it has its background steep in that, and that cannot be taken away. And then we come to AD 325, the Council of Nicaea. And the Council of Nicaea too, we quoted a bit, but that also, let's look at it the way it is. Because this is the quote from the canon after the Council of Nicaea, Canon 20. That is more or less like resolutions. So it said, for as much as there are certain persons who kneel on the Lord's Day and in the days of Pentecost, therefore, to the intent that all things may be uniformly observed everywhere, in every parish, it seems good to the Holy Synod that prayer be made to God standing. So it mentioned the Lord's Day, but we quote this AD 325, but AD 325 did not change Sabbath to Sunday. That is not the language of the express canon. It is talking about whether people will stand or kneel down when they are praying on Sunday. So it's already taken it for granted that there is a Sunday. So this is not where it was changed. However, and I'm developing it such that when we're making these arguments to other people, we don't jump the gun. So that they say, oh, but I didn't say that. Yeah, we can acknowledge it, didn't say that. But that's not all the story. Because this council did not preserve all that happened at Nicaea. Because on the agenda was Trinity. That was the main thing on the agenda for Council of Nicaea. Beyond that was the Quartodeciman controversy, which is when to celebrate Easter. Whether Easter should be just like we know of, that we calculate based on God's calendar, or Easter should always be on a Sunday. So that was that controversy. But they did not tell us what decision they reached with respect to that point. It's not in the canon that came out. But that is where you get the crux of the matter, because if Sunday being replacing Saturday is a resurrection issue, and they have discussed it and didn't tell us what they agreed on, then they hiding something from us. And so that is where we need to go and find what is the basis. And if you read a letter from Constantine to Eusebius, this letter is captured in some ancient writings, including Socrates. So there's credibility that that letter existed. And if you look at that letter, this is Constantine supposedly speaking. And he said, at the council, Constantine was a member of Council of Nicaea. He was there. So at the council, we also considered the issue of our holiest day, Easter. And it was determined by common consent that everyone, everywhere, should celebrate it on one and the same day. For what can be more appropriate or what more solemn than that this feast, from which we have received the hope of immortality, should be kept by all without variation, using the same order and in a clear arrangement. And in the first place, it seemed very unworthy for us to keep this most sacred feast following the custom of the Jews, a people who have soiled their hands in a most terrible outrage and have thus polluted their souls and are now deservedly blind. And he continued, since we have cast aside their way of calculating the day of the festival, we can ensure that future generations can celebrate this observance at the more accurate time, which we have kept from the first day of the Passion until the present. Therefore, have nothing in common with that most hostile people, the Jews. We have received another way from the Savior. In our holy religion, we have set before us a course which is both valid and accurate. Let us unanimously pursue this. Let us, most honored brothers, withdraw ourselves from that detestable association. So this is a lot of information in terms of what people think and what is informing people. So now when you read the Lord's Day, you know where it's coming from. So in this letter, we find more convincing evidence for people wanting to change the day because they don't want to do something with some despicable people, and they want to do things on their own way because they think the Savior has provided another way, which he didn't. And so that is very, very important that we keep we understand this from this letter. So that is where Constantine comes in from the research that I could do. Then after him, well, history continues. So history continues in this timeline from AD 363, AD 515, AD 558, AD 585, and AD 596. Things keep happening. And what's going on? So in AD 363, we have the Council of Laodicea. And some people say it's 364, doesn't change much. So 360, 364, circa, however, as they say, around. In this Council of Laodicea, which was more in the eastern side, so some people say, oh, but it happened, but it didn't happen in the West. Well, we're talking about the same people. And so we have this canon, number 29, stating Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day. Not only that you shouldn't, you should work on that day, and rather you should honor the Lord's Day, which is Sunday. And if they can, resting then as Christians. And if anybody should Judaize, that person should be an anathema from Christ. You should be cut off. So that's serious. So you see how this ties with the thinking of Constantine, right? It's all about the Easter. It's all about the resurrection. It's all about the new way, supposedly, that they thought Christ had provided. What happened in the AD 511? So AD 11, we get into a period and some kings, who call them the Merovingian kings. It's a family that had a dynasty that went on for a bit. So the first person beginning that dynasty, which was Clovis the First, and Clovis was the king of France, ruling in what around where we call France now. And it says it's a key period during the transformation of Rome into Europe, becoming the Europe that we're seeing. He married a Christian, became a Christian himself, and for Gregory, they saw in Clovis the first like the new Constantine. And Clovis, just before he died, he convened the Council of Orleans. So what happened at Council of Orleans? But before that, look at the area that these Merovingian kings were operating. It's a wide area, right? So the deep orange is their kingdom, and they didn't leave out even the light orange. It's their tributary regions. So pretty much they're covering the whole of the gamut of Europe, right? So when these laws are made, look at the extent and the people who are obeying it. All right. So then what happened for the council itself, AD 511? There are two canons that speak to what we are concerned about, the breach. Canon 26, it says on Sunday, lay members must attend whole mass. So when you hear mass, then you know we are dealing with the Catholic Church, right? So you have to attend the whole mass and are not to leave the benediction. That's before the benediction. And if you leave, you have to be publicly censured by the bishops. And then Canon 31, it says, if you are the bishop, then unless you are ill, you must not fail to attend service on Sunday. And if you read church law, the Catholic Church law, it said you must attend Sunday service. You must attend, and other days with order, like with compulsion. So for them, those days are not days that you pick and choose whether you want to do. It has compulsion to it, and we'll see some of these as we go along. So that is what happened at the Council of Orleans, AD 511, under the leadership of Clovis I, the new Constantine. Now, AD 558, Clovis is no longer, and we have Clothbar. Clothbar is also another of the Merovingian dynasty. And when he came, this is what he issued an edict forbidding all servile labor on the Lord's Day. So Sunday, no servile work, just like what the real Sabbath is. Right? And he is arguing that the law, it is the law of the sacred scriptures that we don't pollute the Lord's Day. So these are some of the things that I say, let us pick so that it gives us the zeal in how we also observe the Sabbath. So they are in the breach, but look at the zeal, look at their thinking, because they think that on the Lord's Day you don't profane the day. You need not to be involved in Sabbath labors. Are we? Do we get involved? So if we are not in the breach, then we have to learn from those who are in the breach what they were doing right? So then we see AD 585. What happened in AD 585? So we have another Merovingian king, King Guntram. And he said, keeping the Lord's day, whereupon you were born anew and freed from all sin. So it's a symbol of a new beginning for him, right? And at that time, you don't get involved in even court processes and all that. Stop it. But be occupied in mind and body in hymns, in the praise of God. Let your eyes and your hands be on that day be lifted up to God, for this is the day of perpetual rest. This is shadowed to us in the 7th day in the law and the prophet. So they know that there's the real Sabbath, but for them that's the shadow. The new one is the Lord's day. But we can learn from it and say, yeah, that day I'm going to lift up my hands in all day lifted up to God, and I'm going to occupy my mind and my body in hymns. And that is the beauty that I want to learn in pursuing the real thing, instead of they using it for the breach. And the last of the set here, AD 596, what happened? The last, not the last, but the last for me dealing with here, another Merovingian king of Austrasia, and that's Chaldebert, and he brought in fines. So monetary fines of 15 solidi. I should have tried to find the calculation in dollars now. So if you are a franc, 15 solidi is like 15, let's say $15, and 7.5 if you are a Roman. So hey, that's probably a good time to be a Roman. So you don't pay more fines for your wrongdoing. So for the citizens of his kingdom, they had to pay more for desecrating their Sunday, which is desecration altogether of God's holy Sabbath day. So you see, everything that coming, they are all interested in promoting this one thing, which is a breach. So we have now we have this skin. Let me go back here. So I'm gonna start another set here. So we're going to go through this period too and see what happened, right? So AD 696, we have another council, King Withred. This is King of Kentishman, which is part of Britain now. And he made a law to forbid work on the Lord's Day. We've already seen that somebody has done it. That's what I'm saying. We're repeating it, but why? We want to see that different kings are doing the same thing because it's important to them, right? With penalties, which were graduated, just like we saw with Romans and France. AD 747, Council of Klobuchar under King Eldebord, which is king of the Messians, which is also in that island there, Britain area, because there were separate kingdoms there. So Messians were one of the people that old people that lived there, and so this king, he also came up with a law that it is ordained that on the Lord's Day, everybody celebrated by all. Everybody, with due veneration and wholly separated from for divine service. Put everything that you have on that day into divine service. And then tells you the things that you need to do, right? Reading the scriptures, the rules of religious conversation, of good living. These were beautiful things attached to a breach. Can we take them and attach them to the real thing? And then we come here, which is one of the turning points. We come Charlemagne, Charles the Great. And we saw Charles the Great when Brother Fanso talked about the nation of Constantine, right? Eventually, it ended with Charlemagne, because when the Pope needed all this protection and had a pact with Pepin, and Pepin did not live that long to see the consummation of that pact between the Pope and the civil powers, it fell on Charlemagne, who was crowned by the Pope to begin a series of other kingdoms. And that actually ended the Merovingian dynasty, and it started the Carlovingian dynasty. Right? So 800 was a turning point. And Brother Afonso told us this is the revival of the Western Roman Empire. So that was a very significant timeline, and we will see more. So this is the area that Charlemagne, at his death, look at the expanse of the area where the power was, right? So when I'm talking about Europe, I'm talking about, at this point, the continental, because all of them are pretty much on the continent, right? So it tells you that this is not something small that we are dealing with. And so Charlemagne, there were two different church councils, but the import of it was that he said, we ordain as it is required in the law of God that no man shall do any several work on the last day. It is true, it is in the law that you're not required to do several law, but not on, quote unquote, the last day, but on the 7-day Sabbath. But they've put it on a different day. And they tell you all the different things that they would consider Sabbath work: fencing, hedging, felling trees, digging, building houses, planting orchards, and all kinds, even working in the justice system. Those were not exemptions. But that all come to church to magnify the Lord their God for those good things for which on this day he bestowed on them. AD 800. That's Charlemagne, king of France, Spain, Italy, Germany, and Hungary. Powerful. So we go on to AD 871. What happened? Alfred. If you started reviewing your English history, Alfred the Great is pretty much the beginning of real kings in England, right? So English king of West Saxon, later king of Anglo-Saxon. He is, if you pick any book and they are giving a chronology of the kings, they're always going to start from Alfred the Great. And there's a lot of stories around Alfred and what he did and what he didn't do. Anyway, so here is shifting in terms of overall, like the whole of Europe kind of, and you see it a specific spot in Europe which gained ascendancy. So King Alfred had a code of laws that were written, and law number 7 says, if anyone engage in Sunday marketing, the problem. So there are fines for engaging in work on Sunday. So Alfred did not leave out his interest in Sunday observance. AD 925. Then we have King Edgar. And it says that from this time, from his period, 957 to 975, thereabout, the race of people, the people considered who they are in Europe, their language, their religion, their custom, their form of government, and divisions of the country were, in their main characteristics, what they were long to remain. And in some respect, what they are today. So when this man is writing this book, I think in the 90s, sorry, I'll look at the date again, don't quote me on that. But as at the time that Charles Westman was writing his book, which is in our modern era, the institutions and everything that we saw in England was pretty much about the same. So what he's saying is that, I mean, we've brought it that far, right? And what did King Edgar, his canon, say? Canon of King Edgar said, and we enjoin that Sunday trading and folk modes General Assembly be abstained from. So it was on the negative side. You don't need to do these things because it's a special day. So we need to go back to this set. I'll see how far I'm going to go, and then we'll probably take a break. So let's go through this first. So this is another set timeline: AD 557, AD 978, AD 995. We're going to the thousands. The numbers are getting bigger. AD 1546. King Edgar. Oh, already look at King Edgar. Okay, so what happened, King Ethelred the second? He had law codes, and it said, let Sunday festival be rightly kept. So pretty almost like the previous one, don't do this marketing and folk modes and all those things, gatherings. They're still focusing on Sunday. (995) Ecclesiastical Institute of Ifrix. So here we have this body, ecclesiastical. We have an idea what it is. So we're talking about the gathering of theologians. So during the time of Ifrix, with this institute, what did they say? Sunday is very solemnly to be reverenced. Therefore, we command that no man dare on that day, on that holy day, to apply to any worldly work unless what you're going to eat, or except something that of necessity. But it goes on to say, on Sunday, God first created, so giving you the biblical, that we will quote some of these. On that day, he sent the people of Israel in the desert, heavenly bread. On that day, he rose from the dead. So he's giving his biblical justification to support the breach. But the important thing is that they are all interested in keeping the Sunday. And before we get to the last one, here you will see that all these kings, King Henry II, Edward III, Richard II, Henry IV, Henry VI, Edward, all of them, they made some prescriptions or some kind of law either in favor or against doing something on Sundays. But at this point, we get a point, right? So Edward VI, 1546, he had a law that directed that all of king's subjects, you look at how imperative, how encompassing it is. All king's subjects shall henceforth celebrate and keep their holy day, Sunday, according to God's holy will and pleasure. In doing so, the day shall be wholly given to God in hearing the word of God, read and taught in private and in public prayers, visiting the sick, and of course, many other good things. This law was reenacted, forbidding things that you're not supposed to do on Sunday. And by 1681, King James I reenacted the same law into a statute. So all these kings interest one thing over their people, and it's a breach. So we can see where in 1676, very close to modern times. Here now we have a parliament. So Sabbath law in parliament in England, 1676. And the title of that law was An Act for the Better Observation of the Lord's Day, commonly called Sunday. And so be it provided that no tradesman, artificer, workman, laborer, person, whatsoever do or exercise any worldly labor, business, or work upon the Lord's Day. And it is said by Charles Weisman that this act was, until 1776 of American independence, the general Sabbath law of American colonies. So it took us far, because that was an act of parliament, right? So let me quickly run you through this, and then we'll end it here, and see what we could do with some questions or discussions. And then we will continue from there next week. So now, what was the law like in the 13 colonial colonies? And here we're talking about the English colonies. Keep in mind that the land called America, stretching from Canada all the way to the south, where there were no those demarcations, right? So here we're only talking about English colonies, because keep in mind the French, the Spanish were the first to come, and they were all Catholics. The next to come were the French. They were all Catholics. And keep in mind, the Catholics, when they came to America, and not the United States, when they came to the Americas, they settled in Canada. So they were doing the work in what we call now United States, but they were stationed in Quebec. And that's why all the French people there. The French came, and that's where they settled. And so Spanish Catholics, French Catholics, it's the English that we had the flavor of Protestantism, right? And so look at that. So Sunday already, we got the Spanish, we got the French. They don't have any problem with Catholics on the Sunday. But the Protestants, they're still following Sunday. So it means all Europe, it's taking. All right, so let's look at how it looked like in colonial America. So what does the set look like? There are two sets here, and I'm going to really get fast through them, because it's details that the book is there. You can review it. It's very, very straightforward, and it's not anything complicated you can understand, and I'm just reading a lot, probably too much, but I just want to point them to you now. So in Virginia, how did it look like? This was the first place where they settled, right? And Lord Delaware, who was the governor, he approved this strict law. Every man and woman shall repair in the morning to the divine service and sermons preached upon the Sabbath day. And now, obviously, I'm getting confused, because when you read the next paragraph, it said the law was, the law also prescribed death penalty upon the third offense of profaning the Lord's day. Brethren, capital punishment for Sabbath breach. The same thing that we knew under the old covenant, right? So these people were very zealous to protect something, but in the breach. And that's the thing that I think we need to learn from. All right? So this was what was happening in Virginia, and this is the first anti-Sabbath law, so to speak, in American soil. So the people that moved from the land in England, they came to settle in America. They came exactly what they knew that we have already gone through. They brought it to America. Same people, Europeans. Carolina, how did that look like? They had a law, an act for the keeping holy the Lord's day. We don't have to read it any further. We get it. And this appears a copy of what was existing in South Carolina at that time. In New Jersey, these are the colonies. They had a law, an act for preventing profanation of the Lord's day. Right? So, and that it had been, and it's the ancient law of England. You see, as I was just saying, they came from England. That is what they know, according to the practice of the primitive Christians, that they set apart first day of the week for service. New Jersey. What happened in Rhode Island? They have an act prohibiting sports and labor on the first day of the week. You got it. They also did the same thing. What do they know? They know from where they're coming from. New Haven. They had a set of laws, and that decree, it said profanation of the Lord's Day shall be punished by fine, imprisonment, or corporal punishment. And if proudly and with high hand against the authority of God, with death. If we see that you not repentant, you are proud and you want to keep desecrating Sunday, then you're going to die for that. And we've seen death before, right? We've seen anathema, we've seen death. This is another death. So we'll see how it goes. Then last set, Connecticut, Plymouth, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and New Netherlands. These are the colonies. What was happening there? I've gone too far. Okay, so Connecticut. Oh man, I got something wrong there. Okay. Okay, I got my Connecticut now. Okay, so they also have profanation of the Lord's Day. What else do I have to say? And then, so 1650, 1668, they are still, whereas the sanctification of the Sabbath is a matter of great concernment to the will of a people, and the profanation thereof is that as pulls down the judgment of God upon that place or people that suffer the same. It is therefore ordered by this court and the authority thereof that if any person shall profane the Sabbath by an unnecessary travel or playing thereon in the time of public worship, or shall keep out of meeting. I mean, brethren, you see that they are very serious about desecration. And you see them referencing the punishment, Ezekiel, and all that. They not mention Ezekiel, but you can desecrate the Sabbath and go away. They understand that, but they are applying it wrongly. Yes, like Massachusetts. They are doing the same thing. The Sabbath be celebrated in a religious manner. On Saturday, people have to make preparations for the Sabbath. On the Sabbath, make preparation for the Sabbath. You see how it works? And they say the Sabbath, of course, being Sunday. Let's see New Netherlands. Same thing. Whereas the true and sincere worship of God according to his holy will and commandment is often profaned and neglected by people of the inhabitants and sojourners in this province who do not keep holy the Lord's Day, but on a disorderly manner accustom themselves to travel, labor, working, and other unlawful exercises and pastimes upon the Lord's Day, to the great scandal of the holy Christian faith. Be it enacted. So this tells you the gist. And when you go, it's very long. I just cut it short. If you go through all the list, you see then different provisions in the law. Bottom line, you can't mess up with Sunday. So that would take us through colonial America. And so that is where we're going to take a stop. And then we would make sure we will continue. But keep in mind, Aquinas said, in the new law, the observance of the Lord's Day took the place of the observance of the Sabbath, not by virtue of the precept, but by the institution of the church and the custom of Christian people. So you see the custom of Christian people. and we've seen the institution of the church. So that's a prominent theologian talking. So we're going to have end of this part 1. What to expect in part 2, how Sunday laws were applied in the United States and the current issues with Sunday law resurgence, all with the same European influences and initiatives. Thank you, brethren, and I hope it's a little bit boring in some respects because of going through the same thing over, but I think it tells you how pervasive a people were so attached to doing the wrong thing zealously. Thank you.